The mummy of Queen Nojamet was found in Deir el-Bahari Royal, Kachet. The mummy had been given artificial eyes made of white and black stones. The eyebrows are real hair and she wears a wig. Her body and parts of her face were colored to give her a more lively appearance. With her mummy, 2 books of the dead were found. One of them, papyrus EA 10490, now in the British Museum, belonged to the king's mother, Nojamet, the daughter of the king's mother, Haeri. The other book of the dead from her tomb can also be found in the British Museum's collection, EA 10541, and is one of the most beautifully illustrated papyri from ancient Egypt.
Now let us be honest. When we say the British Museum's collection, the reality is these papyri was actually stolen from Egypt. There were no negotiations that took place that would allow the British Museum to borrow this collection and display it. This African papyri and all of the artifacts that were taken, stolen from Africa, including Egypt, has been displayed throughout the whole entire world. There's African art throughout the world that has been stolen from Africa. There were no negotiations. Let's be absolutely clear about that. Now let's cut through the chase. What does she look like? What race does it look like she comes from? Is she European? Is she Asian? Is she African? Is she black? Is she white? Is she other? This beautiful queen of antiquity, does she represent the Arabs that are there today? Rhetorically speaking, I don't know why anyone denied that this woman is anything other than a black woman, or what we consider a black woman today. She's obviously a melanated black woman. Yes, this beautiful black queen, Nojamet.
Nojamet was an ancient Egyptian noble lady of the late 20th dynasty or early 21st dynasty of Egypt, the wife of Herihor, high priest of Amun at Thebes.
Now let us try to put this in perspective in relation to time. When you speak about the 21st dynasty of Egypt, it usually is classified as the first dynasty of the ancient Egyptian, the third intermediate period lasting from 1077 BC to 943 BC. Now this timeline is very, very important because we see who the inhabitants of that land was during that 21st dynasty, or in the year 1077 BC to 943 BC. We see who inhabited Egypt. Again, to give this perspective in relation to time, the Arab conquest of Egypt, led by the army of Amin ibn al-As, took place between 639 and 646 AD. Now, this invasion was overseen by Rashidun Caliphate. It ended the 70-century-long period of Roman reign over Egypt that began in 30 BC. Remember, these dates are very important because it shows that prior to the invasion of the Arabs and the Romans and the British, who actually inhabited Egypt. And the people who inhabited Egypt and the people who built those great civilizations were black people. Whether you like it or not, they were black people. They left a record of who they were and who they are to this day. Now, the Greek, on the other hand, they had a presence in Egypt since at least the 7th century BC. Herodotus visited ancient Egypt in the 5th century BC and claimed that the Greeks were one of the first peoples of the foreigners that ever lived there.
Nojamet had several children, 3 sons and 1 daughter, and the future high priest of Amun, King Panidium I. Rarely displayed, the version of this funeral text that accompanied Queen Nojamet into the afterlife, richly illustrated on a piece of papyrus more than 4 meters long and 3,000 years old, will appear in the British Museum exhibition. The body of the queen was filled with sawdust and her hands were set by her side. Between the layers of her wrappings, a heart scarab and 4 small figurines of the 4 sons of Horus were found. The embalming womb, as well as her eyes, nose, mouth, and ears, were covered by wax. The 21st dynasty is known to Egyptology as the apex of mummification technique for a reason. For the first time, elites developed an interest in the preserved body's discrete self-sufficiency. At the close of the Bronze Age, we see a number of changes in the embalmer's art. There were a number of other innovations. The natural and full appearance of the body was now restored. The mummy of Nojamet was packing under her cheeks to restore the fullness of the face, as well as external padding on the body to restore the lifelike quality of torso and limbs. Previously, in the New Kingdom, a mummy's skin was left slack and drawn, allowing desiccated flesh to sink into bones. Now, a more lifelike face was desired. 21st century dynasty embalmers also repaired any defects in the body and skin. They painstakingly repaired tears with leather patches and plaster. They even fixed anatomical problems with additional limbs of wood. The skin of the mummy was finished with a coating of plaster plus red or yellow paint, depending on the sex of the deceased.
Now, this complex method of embalming the body was a way to preserve the natural look of the actual people, the actual kings and queens and royalty who were actually embalmed and preserved for thousands of years, giving it its authentic look, the way that the queen would have looked when she walked this earth. Now, this is Queen Hanatoy, also of the 21st dynasty. Now, you tell me, who did she depict herself as? Queen Mata Mukhat. Queen Make Mudenhat. Now we know that some of the pronunciations are a little off, but that's okay. It does not negate the fact that all of these queens that are being shown were black women thousands of years before the Europeans or the Arab ever made their way to Egypt. And in our research, they'll show one queen with one name and then they'll show the same queen with another name. Those can be chalked up just to human error. But the fact remains that these women were black women. I know people are up in arms with the depiction of the most recent Cleopatra, but the fact is, these queens predated Cleopatra, and by the way, there were several Cleopatras. They predated Cleopatra by hundreds and sometimes thousands of years before anyone of the Arab descent ever set foot on the land known as Egypt today. And we know that the name Egypt means the lands of the blacks, and prior to that, it was known as Kemet, which also meant the land of the blacks. And they were not talking about the soil. They were talking about the pigmentation of the color of the people who lived there, their skin. You know, and I must say, I find it absolutely amazing that someone would try to define us, tell us who we are, tell us our history. Well, that might have worked when we weren't able to read and write, but now our destiny is in our hands. We can read and we can interpret as well as anyone. But not only that, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out those people, those ancient Egyptians were black people. It doesn't take a genius to figure out who the real, true Egyptians were thousands of years before anyone else walked on those lands. And the reason why they don't want to give up Egypt, because once they give up Egypt, they have to give up that whole entire region. They have to admit that entire region was inhabited by black people. Black people, same DNA, same hairstyle, same skin color. And not only that, but even the eyewitnesses. And not only that, but so many eyewitnesses, history, archaeology, DNA has proved who the original Egyptians were. And make no mistake about it, as I said earlier, whether you like it or not, they were black people. And from this day forward, we will never let anyone try to define us or teach us our history. No, thank you. We'll take care of this ourselves. And finally, I do have one other question. So you mean to tell me the Europeans came all the way to Egypt, built these great civilizations and went back? I find that hard to believe. As a matter of fact, I'm not buying it. The other part of my question is, where are the great civilizations in Europe that predate or that's right around the same time that the Europeans were building these great pyramids in Egypt and these great civilizations in Egypt? Why are there no civilizations in Europe as well? And why did they build the Sphinx with the head of a brother? You worry about your history, and we'll focus on ours. We'll tell our own story. The Black Excellence and Abundance Channel, where Black history is every day. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And always remember, thou art rich.